I'm super excited to be here today. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, as she mentioned, I am from Iowa originally. I'm from Webster City, but I've lived in the Des Moines area for most of my life. My grandparents farmed, and my mom grew up on a farm, but my parents did not farm. And they got divorced when I was young, and we moved to the Des Moines area with my mom. So I used to have it all together and look like a professional person, and this is what I look like every day now. So I've spent my career working in agriculture. I worked for 11 years for a company called Rain and Hail. Some of you are probably familiar with it. It's one of the largest crop insurance companies in the United States. And I worked in a variety of roles there, from marketing to operational type stuff, and then most recently was the risk manager, which meant I dealt with all of those crop insurance policies that the company sold, how we manage that risk if there was a big drought or a big loss of some sort. So that's my background in working in agriculture. And then I decided about coming up on 3 years ago that I needed a change. And a lot of that change I needed was because those little kids that are sitting in that chair. And I wanted to do something that was more of a passion of mine. I didn't know exactly what that was, but I also knew that I wanted to spend more time around them. And so I left that career on, it was February 1st in 2013, and that same weekend was the Super Bowl. And I'm going to play this commercial, though I'm sure I think I'm going to play this commercial. Okay, I'm not going to play this commercial. Has everybody seen this commercial? It's the second most popular commercial of all time in the United States. And it's a Dodge truck commercial set to a speech by Paul Harvey from an FFA convention in the 70s. And it's 2 minutes worth of absolutely beautiful pictures of farmers and ranchers in the United States. And when we were sitting in our basement watching it with some friends, I absolutely loved it. I mean, how many of you kind of tear up when you watch this? It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's agriculture, right? And I didn't think a thing of it until a couple weeks later. I read an article in the Des Moines Register that pointed out, yeah, that commercial was great and iconic, but where were the women pictured in that commercial? And oh, by the way, where are the women pictured anywhere in agriculture? And I had a moment where I stopped and I thought, yeah, where are the women pictured in agriculture? I just worked for 11 years for a company that creates all kinds of stuff. You know, we put out all kinds of pictures that make up what we view as agriculture, especially those of us who aren't working on farms every day. And I can't say I'd ever once stopped to think about the lack of pictures of women in agriculture. And it completely shocked me. So I had this aha moment of, why? Why have I not thought of this before? And I don't think anybody's really thought of it, because it's just the way that it's just always been. It's not that anybody intended to leave out women. Women have always been a large part of agriculture, but it's just not been the way of things. And so, as I point out, this was my picture of a farmer too. Just like this is a picture out of that commercial, you know. And so I decided in the middle of the night that I needed to change that. I'm sorry, this number's bumped down a little bit. This is what happens when you put it on from one computer over to another. But maybe you all knew that the number of farmers in the U.S. that are women is 30%. And when I read that number in that newspaper article, it absolutely shocked me. I didn't realize it was that high. Shame on me. As I said, I know women are an important part of agriculture, and over the last couple of years since I've been doing this thing called FarmHer, it's become clear to me that I think that number is actually low. I think 30% is low, because that's the number of women that are counted as a producer on the farm operation by the ag census. I think that there's more women involved than what you can actually count on the census. So I think the number I heard earlier today in Iowa is 25% of producers are women, but 30% overall. That's almost 1 million women are counted by the ag census as being part of the production on a farm or ranch in the United States. And again, that number was shocking to me. And so, as I said, I just left a job that I'd left all normalcy in my life behind, and at that point was at home with my little kids every day and thinking, oh my gosh, I got to figure out something else to do. They're 18 months and 3.5 and like climbing the curtains, But so I woke up my husband in the middle of the next night and I told him, I think I figured out what I want to do. I think I'm going to start photographing women involved in farm operations and start using those to somehow, help update that image of agriculture. And a little backstory, as I said, I'd gotten to the point where I was ready to leave that career. And for, probably a good year leading up to that me leaving, I had been trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'd been throwing everything out there, even from like, let's open a Jimmy John's franchise. And my husband was like, no, this is the worst idea you've ever had. So when I woke him up in the middle of the night, he was like, yes, go for it. And I was like, that's all the encouragement I needed. So I started this, and what I started doing was I started by calling up a few of the women who were interviewed in that article in the Des Moines Register, because I honestly had no idea how to, I got this grand idea, right? But now what? What do you do? So I called up these two women, or I Googled them first. Thank goodness for Google. And I fully expected them to tell me, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Go away, crazy person who wants to come to my farm and take pictures and you don't know what you're going to do with them. But they didn't. And so I started down this path of FarmHer. So what I'm going to talk about today, I've got a mix of, this is kind of a little bit different from my normal presentation. It's all about FarmHer. There's a lot of pictures that I've taken over the last 2.5 years. But there's also some photography tips thrown in of things that you can do to help share your story, just like I'm sharing the story of these women through FarmHer. So if you have questions, feel free to holler at me, and I'd love to answer them along the way, or save them for the end is fine too, but or come up to me after the end of the presentation. So this is a farm, and it's an urban farm, and it's right here in Des Moines. And I had never heard a thing about this farm. I worked in crop insurance, which is, big production agriculture, and I'd never heard a thing about this farm, like I said. And it is called Global Greens Farm, and it is a farm to train refugees. Lutheran Services in Iowa has a refugee program where they constantly have an influx of people who are forced to leave their countries where they're from. This woman's name is Angelique, and she's from Rwanda, and she had to leave. She's here with no family. And I'm sure most of you know that outside of the U.S., the majority of ag workers are women. And so we have these refugees who are coming in who have spent their life working in agriculture, and a lot of them like smaller scale farms. And so what this farm does is it teaches them how to keep doing what they've learned their whole life, and how to take that and make that useful here in Iowa, which is a whole nother environment from where they're from, right? And it's such a cool program because it gives these women and men a chance to succeed, a far greater chance to succeed at life here, where they didn't get asked to be placed here in Iowa. This is just the way that a refugee program works. So this woman is from Bhutan. She's here with her family, actually. And so what they do, they all have a small plot at this farm, and they grow vegetables for their own family's use, and then they also sell them at a farmer's market so they can make money off of it as well. So it's kind of something different. Not something that you think of when you think of Iowa agriculture, but something I've found along the way. This is one of my favorite places I've been to. This is a ranch in Texas, and it's run by a woman named Barbara Mazurek. And you'll see a picture of Barbara here in a minute. She's 79 years old. I found her through Facebook when I was going to Texas for a conference, and the conference wasn't one of the best conferences I've been to, but that was the best day that I ever could imagine spending in Texas. Barbara is in the back. Her daughter-in-law was in the front there in that picture. She's 79 years old, and she runs 6,000 acres worth of ranch in the hill country north of San Antonio on her own. Her husband died in an accident on their ranch about 30 years ago when her kids were in high school. And when that happens, you don't get a chance to just sit and do nothing. You pick up and you move on. And so the day that I was there, it was clear that she's a pillar of the community. She has part-time help that comes on the weekends to help with fences. She shot that goat right there. She made sure to tell me all about it. It got on her land, and she didn't want it there, so she said, I shot it and put it on the wall. Yeah, she was, I absolutely loved her. She's actually part of a documentary that Iowa Public Television is working on right now about FarmHer. They went down to Texas to see her. So she has boar goats, or these aren't boar goats, I'm sorry, these are Angora goats. And there was a shearing team there that day, and so her son and daughter-in-law and 2 grandsons were there helping as they graded all of the mohair. I got a chance a couple months ago to go to Montana as well, which was a whole new experience. How many of you have been to Montana? Isn't it beautiful? And Iowa's beautiful too. I love Iowa. I'll never leave, but aside from travel. But it's big sky country and absolutely gorgeous. And I got a chance to visit 3 ranches while I was there, all different roles that these women play. And this young woman's name is Olivia. She grew up on a farm, or a ranch, I'm sorry, I call it a farm. And went to college at Colorado State and did not want anything to do with the ranch, and then got a job out of college, and a few years later decided that she only wanted to be on the ranch. And so she came back, and I got to follow her right as the sun was going down while she was checking the cattle. And it was absolutely, their land is on the edge of a reservation, and it's like you could see for miles and not see anything else. It was one of those kind of pinch me moments when I thought, you get to come out here every night and check cattle as the sun is going down. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I like to photograph parts and pieces of things. I don't always photograph a face, as you can see. And to tell a story a little bit about what I see, and as I'm lucky enough to follow these women. Now she said at the end, she said, "Do you want to see my hobby farm?" when we got back to her house. And she said she started like yelling, "Come here, girls," and all like this flock of chickens came running at us. And so I had to take that picture there at the very end. So some of you may know Lois. Lois she has a goat dairy just south of here in Knoxville. And Lois was the second person that I photographed with FarmHer. And this picture was the one in Oprah magazine this summer. There was actually a girl who's a cattle producer here in Iowa as well, and Lois and Angelique. And the 4th one is blanking right now, but it was a page article. And as I said, Lois was the second person I photographed. I had nothing to show her for what I was trying to do, but she was kind enough to let me come photograph. And they're still some of my favorite pictures. They really show a good connection that she has with her goats. And so what she does is they milk 14 to 18 goats twice a day, and she makes cheese with those. And they sell cheese throughout the Des Moines metro area, and she ships it to restaurants around the U.S. as well. Still one of my, like I said, I stay in good contact with her. I try to stay in contact with everybody I've photographed. You spend a little time with them, and you get kind of invested in their story. So you just saw all different types of farms there. You saw everything, from like a thousands of acres ranch in Texas to Montana to a really small scale urban farm here in Des Moines. And one of the really cool things that I've seen along the way is these women, they might have 1 acre, they might have less than an acre, they might have 6,000, but at the end of the day, you see the same love of what they do. You see this love for the land, for the animals. And it's been such a journey to me to see such the important role that they play in agriculture, and every one of them plays in agriculture. And this is one of the things I love to talk about too, is agriculture is such a cool, we have a culture. Half the word is the word culture, and I don't think we think about that enough, about what a unique culture it is of friends, family, community, faith, whatever that means to you, but it's been such a treasure to get to see that unique part of it and to see the culture that I think women bring to agriculture, which is so very unique and so cool. So now I'm going to start talking a little bit more about how I take these types of pictures. And there's going to be more pictures in here, don't worry, because everyone just wants to see pictures all the time. We're going to talk through a little bit about, as you're thinking about recording your own story and showing your own story of your farm or your ranch, and why that's important. And I'll tell you why it's important. Agriculture has a lot of people who are attacking it from the outside. it's kind of an industry in peril sometimes when you look at it, because of the way that people who don't know much about agriculture kind of come at the industry and have all these things to say. And at the end of the day, I really think that finding your voice in agriculture pictures play such an important part of that, because you can show people the beauty of what you do. You can show them the everyday. You can show them the very real part about who you are and what you do. And a story is great, and this is probably just because I'm a photographer, but I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. I think by putting yourself out there through images will go so much further, because we all connect through pictures. So I'm going to talk more about that, what you're going to photograph, how you're going to do it, where, when, who, and then last of all, a little bit about sharing it. So this is a farm in up near Webster City, near where I'm from. And my mom and I went up to put some flowers on my grandma's grave on Memorial Day, and we had my 4-year-old, he was 3 then, along with us. And she said, oh, by the way, I called a friend of mine from high school, or a friend that she like rode the bus with when she was a kid. And she's like, and we're going to go to their farm. And I was like, hey, Mom, whoa, wait. But actually, it was wonderful. It was a good day. And it's a family with generations involved in agriculture, as you can see by this young girl. So I always tell people, when you're talking about taking pictures of your farm and how to share your story, stop and think about, what is it that is your favorite thing about your farm? Is it the way that you work with your family? Is it your animals? Is it, I don't know what that is. Is it the sunset or the sunrise, or, what is that important part to you? And that's the part that you always need to go back to when you're trying to show your farm through pictures. That's the important part, that if you connect with that, and you will show that in a way that other people can connect with it. So keep that picture. In fact, just jot down for a quick second what you think of when you think of your operation. What is it that brings you that happiness and that smile to your face when you think about it? I see a few people writing. Okay. It's okay. We're not in class. You're not going to get graded on it. If I write in my head, it's gone immediately. I'll tell you what. I can't write in my head. So this is one of the farms that I was at in Nebraska. About a year ago, I had a chance to go to Nebraska 2 different times, and I photographed 7 different women while I was there. And when I think about what you want to show on a family farm, this was it. This was Gloria, and she and her husband started this dairy 30 years ago. Their sons work there now, and their grandkids are involved as well. So it's a family operation. And her granddaughter, Mackenzie, who was in 7th grade then, she's surely in 8th grade now, was there after school helping with chores. And they had some calves that they were trying to teach how to take a bottle. And Mackenzie didn't really want to be there. It was after school, and she wanted to go home. She had somewhere to go that night, and she wanted to go home and take a shower. And she, her grandma was kind of like, it's okay, we have to get this done. And by the way, there's this girl here, so you kind of got to hang in there. And it was just one of those, like this picture. I love it. This is the types of things I think about when I think about the women that I see working with their family. And those are the types of things that you need to think about showing, somehow capturing those. And a lot of times, if you're in it, you can't take a picture like that, obviously. But that human aspect to it is such an important part of it. Onto the equipment. The biggest thing that I can tell you about equipment is use what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have, but use what you do have. How many of you shoot on a camera like this, the one at the top? Yeah, they're far more accessible than they were. I mean, a digital SLR when I first got out of college was like thousands and thousands of dollars. But now you can go Black Friday shopping and get one for, I don't know. I wouldn't go Black Friday shopping for one of those. I'm getting in a fight probably or something. But anyway, it's called a digital SLR. It takes great pictures. If you've been thinking about one, if you have questions about it, feel free to let me know, though I am not a technology person. I actually see Jackie over here. She knows far more about cameras than I do. But I'm glad to help step you through the ins and outs of what it means to have a camera like that. And then how many of you shoot pictures on your phone? Me too. And a lot of the time, the pictures that I take on my phone are just as good, if not better, as the ones I take. It depends on the situation and what I'm photographing, but I love to take pictures on my phone. And so again, use what you have at your disposal. That's the biggest thing I can say about taking pictures, because it's not about the equipment, it's about actually taking them and using them and sharing them. So also one of the things that I am guilty of is, if you do have a camera outside of your phone, how many of you who do have a camera have read the manual? Oh, good job. Way to go. I hadn't. And that's one of the biggest things that I can tell you. If you do have one and you haven't read it, or if you're thinking about getting one, next time you're in a car ride, just take the manual with you and take the camera and sit there and mess with some of the settings. Because I had my camera for like 3 years before I sat down and read the manual, and I learned so much about how to take pictures in a different way than what I was already doing. And I think that gives you confidence and is important to be able to take your pictures kind of that next level. So just a little bit about equipment and how to do it. Obviously, if you're going to take selfies on your farm, then you need a phone camera to do that. This is another one, that little girl that you saw earlier on that farm in Webster City. This is her brother, actually. See, so guys do make it into my pictures sometimes. And I, just as a side note, whenever I go to a farm, I photograph whoever's there. I don't specifically say, like, guys, go away. But I mean, with FarmHer, my focus is on showcasing the women and what they do, and usually the guys like find their way like out of the picture real quick. So, but I have had a few places where it's really nice to be able to show that family working together, and so I actually like it when that happens. But talking a little bit about how to take your pictures, as you probably saw with my pictures before, my style is documentary. So I like to show somebody while they're working. I don't pose my shots, and I don't tell someone, hey, stand there and smile and look at me, because I don't think that shows the reality of what you do. And so when you go back to that idea that you had earlier about what makes you smile when you think about your farm or your ranch, think about how you can capture that subject in a way that is important to you. I mean, that's the biggest thing I can say. Is it chore time? What is it that you can show them working? And I think there's so much beauty in seeing people work. So Shannon, do any of you know Shannon? She had to leave. She had some cows get out, I think I saw on Twitter. So this is one of my favorite things I talk about when I talk about documenting somebody. So I go back to this first one. Shannon didn't know I was coming the day that I photographed her. I was going somewhere else in southern Iowa, and one of the farms that I was going to fell through, and so I posted on Facebook, hey, is anybody around and working? And somebody said, hey, contact Shannon, here's her phone number. And so I called her up, and she just happened to be coming back through. She hauls pigs on contract as well, and she happened to be coming back through. And I met her in Osceola, and then we went to the co-op. I think it'll keep going now. And so she said, oh, I just have to go here first. And I said, well, I need to come in because these things are a part of your everyday. And I love taking pictures of stuff like this because how many of you have been in this situation, this exact situation, right? And then we went out to the pasture, and she had bought mineral to give to the cattle, and she was calling them in right there. And again, just some of my very favorite shots are when somebody doesn't expect that you're going to be there. She didn't have time to go home and change her clothes before I showed up, and I love that because that, again, it shows this is her on any given day of the week. And so, one of the things, as you're thinking about taking pictures of people and trying to document them, having them in their environment, I know, and you know what? I can say this because she's not here. She doesn't like this picture, and I absolutely love this picture because there's so much emotion going on, right? And these types of pictures are some of my favorite. So thinking about where you're going to take your pictures, this is always an issue for me, and if you take a lot of pictures, it's always an issue for you too. I show up at a farm, and we're inside and outside and moving in and out. So this is in a farrowing facility, And as you can imagine, it was night in a farrowing facility, and all the light we had was those little lights on the ceiling. I don't use flash, so that should be helpful to you guys if you want to try to take pictures, kind of real life pictures. I don't set those pictures up and bring flashes. I mean, who would bring flashes into a farrowing facility anyway? I'm not sure how you would even go about that. But anyway, you have to stop and think about how you're going to take the pictures you're going to take. If you're taking them with a camera, your camera usually will adjust pretty well. If you're taking them with a phone camera, if you're taking them with a big camera like a digital SLR, then you have a bigger situation to deal with of how to get enough light into the camera so your pictures aren't all blurry. So what I do is I have a lens that lets a lot of light into the camera, and I switch to that lens, and then I crank my ISO up really high. So that's like the film speed for those of you who might have learned how I did to shoot on film. And so again, that shoots faster and allows more light into the picture. So something that you just always have to kind of keep in mind, so that, because there's nothing worse than taking what you think is going to be a really cool picture and, like wanting to go share that on social media or somewhere else, and then you look at it and it's blurry or something's bad about it. Just part to consider. Now, this woman that you saw in that first picture, I always love this because I have people say that, don't you think that like these, like a small vegetable farm is always more beautiful than, a large production facility of some sort? And I always say, no, I don't. While of course we all think like growing things is beautiful to take pictures of, I firmly believe that you can find beauty wherever you are. You just have to look for it. This isn't a farrowing facility. It was stinky, it was gross. I mean, like, very honestly, but I love this picture of her. I love it. She looks happy. She was talking to her husband who was over here. I'm not sure what they were talking about. My mom walked in there and was like, she couldn't stand the smell, and they're probably laughing at my mom, quite honestly. My mom travels with me sometimes, and so. Anyway, so this is Liz Dorr. Her and her husband, Gary, have a farrowing facility in Creighton, Nebraska, which is just north of Norfolk, where I spent some time last year. And I was just there for a real brief period of time. It's not been the easiest thing to take pictures in hog facilities in general. I mean, there's a concern about biosecurity. And a lot of the times, the people who own the buildings don't own the animals in the building. So it's just always one of those things that is always changing. But this was my first time in a farrowing facility, and showing the baby pigs was probably my very favorite part about that. It was interesting to me as we walked up and down the rows every time we'd come back around. And what she was doing was she was taking notes on every pen. There'd be more babies laying on the ground, and it was just such an interesting process to me to be able to see. So sometimes I find myself in such cool situations that I think I'm pretty blessed to be able to have. So time of day and time of year. When you're thinking about showing your farm, go back to that idea that you had in the beginning. What time of year is that? Is that summer when, everything's green? Is it a winter? Maybe is it Christmas time? I don't know. But time of day and time of year always play into what you want to show. And many times, I can't say how many times this happens, I'll contact somebody about taking pictures. Actually, Landy McFarland, she's not in here, is she? Do any of you know Landy? I took pictures at her farm, and she said, well, I don't think you want to come in March because it's like mucky and gross and muddy. And I said, actually, I do want to come in March because it's mucky and gross and muddy. And I think that that's part of your everyday. And those are the important things to try to show. Because I think a lot of times we wait for it to be beautiful and green out before we want to take pictures of something. But remember that that's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing is to show it in its reality, I think, sometimes. And there's beauty in that. So this was another one in Nebraska. And this was the first time and only time, actually, that I have been to an orchard. And it was a third-generation family orchard. And the woman that I photographed here was Cindy DeGroot. And I think it's going to roll forward on its own. You know why these roll forward on their own, because I would talk about these women all day long if you let me. And so Cindy did not grow up on a farm. but she married into it, and so now is a part of this operation, and her daughter-in-law is actually the same situation. So all 3 generations of their family operate this orchard in Madison, Nebraska, and then they have an on-farm store that they pick and they sell most of their apples right there at their store where they sort and process them all. And we showed up on opening day, so I'm sure that was, real exciting for her. But that's the weekend that I happened to be in Nebraska, and it just so happened that's when the apples are ready and the store is ready to open. So she is actually on the front of our calendar this year, which I didn't bring in with me. I take all the pictures that I've taken throughout the year and put those out on social media, and people can vote for them, and that's how the pictures land into the calendar. And a picture of Cindy is the one on the front of the calendar this year. So who? Again, I always go back to that first thought that you had when you think about your farm. Who is it that you want to show? Is it your kids? Is it siblings? Is it a parent? Who is it that when you think about showcasing your farm and what you do, who would you show? I think that family farms are, over 80% of the farms in the U.S. are still family farms, and so I love showcasing those different generations working together. It's one of my favorite things, and I also love showing their animals. If you could look at the backside of my pictures from any farm I'm at, if it's cows, if it's pigs, it doesn't matter what. I always get tons of pictures of the cats, the dogs, the cows, pigs, whatever. So, and one of the biggest things, if you're taking pictures of somebody who is not your own family, make sure that you get their permission to share their pictures, especially if there's kids in it. This is one thing that I am try to be as good as I can about whenever I go to a farm. I get a release signed, and not because I want to do something bad with the pictures, but because I want to put them out there and spread them as far as I can, but they're not it's not me that I'm taking pictures of, right? And it's not my family. And so I just want to make sure that I'm as careful as I can be and make sure that everybody understands what I'm going to do with the pictures. And when I put them out on social media or my website, while I hope that everybody sees them, only does good things with them, I never ever know where they're going to end up because it's out in the social realm. So it's super important. You don't have to always get it in writing, but make sure, especially if you have other people's kids in the pictures, that you get permission before you start sharing them. These are some pictures I took of a lady that I met in southern Iowa. So they have a ranch manager that I don't know his name. Some of you probably know him. I think it's down where near Shannon lives, actually. I can't remember the name of the town that we drove through, but showing like the people working together. One of the coolest things when I got down there was they had a community of people working that day to round up the cattle, to bring them into this area. That was the first time, by the way, that I've photographed on horseback. Has anybody ever tried to take pictures on horseback? Were they all blurry? No, you've probably done it a lot. I haven't. Like 3/4 of mine were blurry before I got on my feet. So this one here this is like one of the only ones that I have while I was on horseback that I would actually show anybody else. But anyway, a good learning lesson that if you are going to try to take pictures on horseback, strap your camera bag down really well, because when the horse starts going, the bag was like flying and hitting me. It was terrible. So anyway, I love showing that story of what's going on. And so these kids were sitting there and they were talking, and actually Pioneer used this in one of their publications last year. And it's just a good everyday. These are kids, on a farm. And I love pictures of people jumping over a fence because it shows that they're moving. Anytime that someone jumps over a fence, I have to run up and take a picture of it. And you may not always know it's a woman, but you see that little flash of pink up there in the corner? There's little bits about the picture. I always make sure there's something that if you really look at it, that you can tell that it's a woman doing it. Now this is a picture that I don't share outside of ag audiences usually. While I'm sure you all know what's going on in this picture, a lot of people may not always know what's going on in that picture. So that's one that I use when I talk about making sure everyone who's in that picture. And actually, this picture was in Successful Farming magazine, and Kim had signed a release, but I was taking pictures of everybody who was there that day. And the other people, so Successful Farming was running the picture, but a different picture. And then like the day before it needed to go to print, they called me and they said, that picture's not going to work. We need a new one of this situation. And so I sent them this one, and they liked it, and they wanted to run it. And then they said, do you have releases for all these people? And I said, oh, I just broke my cardinal rule. I don't know who these other people are in the pictures. So Kim got it taken care of. But that goes back to making sure that you have permission if you're going to use pictures beyond just your own personal use. Perspective. This is one of my favorite things about taking pictures. If you just get up high or get down low, you can change your perspective so much of what you see. So that first picture of that little girl holding that cat, that's what you would normally look at when you take a picture, right? But then that next picture is, she just took like a few steps forward, and I got down and I took a picture just of the middle part of her, and you see something so different. And I think one of the coolest things about perspective is when there's a face in the picture, you look right at the face, and it's hard to look past where she is or what she's doing. But when there's no face in the picture, you look at her hands and how they're holding that little cat, and you see something completely different. Some people don't like that I don't have a lot of faces in my pictures, but I do that kind of twofold. First of all, because I'm documenting them, and usually means I'm following them, so I'm behind them or off to the side. Second of all, when I work, surprise, surprise, I talk to people the whole time, and so their mouths are moving. They aren't smiling. You know, I'm not getting pictures that are like these great face shots. The third reason is, again, when you have a face in a picture, that's immediately what you look at. But when you start to take that away, you look at what they're doing instead. And especially, with FarmHer, I think it's so important to see what these women are doing. So think about varying your perspectives. Take your pictures a couple different ways. And then you saw this through some of the stories that I talked through today. Telling a story through your photographs is my favorite thing to do, and there's many ways to put these types of stories together so that you can kind of see them all grouped up. If you don't have words with pictures, then it is important to tell a story and to allow people to see what's going on. And there's all kinds of apps that will allow you to throw pictures together like this and to tell a story if you're going to share it on social media. But, you know, spending some time with your subject is probably the number one thing. I usually get anywhere from an hour to maybe 2 or 3 at a farm, and I was able to spend a day and a half at one in Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, and the pictures were way better than anything I've taken for a long time. And I said it's because I got that time to just follow, you know, through all these different things that you're doing and really capture that. So take the time to try to follow your subject is another important part. This was a trip we took to Oklahoma this summer, and Iowa is hot in the summer. We can all agree. Oklahoma was hotter in the summer. The day that we were there, it was 101 degrees real temperature at 6 o'clock at night still. This woman that you see, her name is Karen Crable, and her daughter Brittany is in college and was home for the summer working on the farm. And so we photographed the two of them. Karen's husband and Brittany's dad died a few years ago of a brain tumor. And so Karen is a CPA, and she started focusing full-time on the farm at that point so that her daughter Brittany could take over the farm because she's in college right now. And so Brittany wants to farm full-time, and so that's the way that they're making this work right now. They've got a couple of people helping them, but they were dealing with seed wheat that day, and it was, they're cool women to meet, hardworking women, and they've been through a lot. But again, you know, it doesn't just stop when you go through tragedy. I've met so many women like this, and I have so much respect for what they do and who they are. Brittany goes to Oklahoma State, and this was her internship this summer, working on the farm. And there's back to telling that story. Look at that dirt. We don't have that kind of dirt here, do we? It's more red if you can see it. And when we were there, it was in the hottest part of I mean, it was so hot out, like I said. And it's really hard to take pictures when the sun is really high and in extreme heat. You get lots of shadows when the sun is high, and it's really hard to take pictures. So what I always tell people to do, use that sun to your advantage. Put it behind your subject, which is kind of an odd thing to do. But then you get that little peak of sun coming through, and your picture looks all of a sudden a whole lot different versus just someone who's got sun blasting on their face. And then back to changing your perspective. Just get down every once in a while and look at what the scene is from a whole different angle. Water was such an important part of that day. Again, did I mention it was hot, hot, hot? And that's another interesting part. I have to say that most of the time, as you all know, when I go to photograph, the elements are not perfect. There's rain, there's snow, there's sleet, there's heat, whatever that is. You know, and I think those all play into the pictures. You know, it's easy to say, oh, let's not do this today because it's not perfect. I know, wasn't that dog cute? So that's part of their story. That was their dog. It was a mini Australian Shepherd puppy, and it was tiny and cute. And then they made us dinner at the end of the day, and she had the table set so beautifully. So I look at all those, and you know, those tell a story about our day and our time with Brittany. When I say our, Lexi Merrick was along with me. She was my full-time intern this summer, and she's still going to be an intern through the rest of the school year for FarmHer. So sharing your work. How many of you use social media? Awesome. Share away. You know, if you have a personal page, great. If you have a page for your farm, even better. Sometimes that helps separate those different audiences that you're looking to share things with. If you're looking to kind of advocate, then having a page for your farm is obviously super important. How many of you know what a hashtag is? Good job. Okay, so a pound sign that we used to have on our phones, that's a hashtag. And we use the hashtag FarmHer all over the place. And what that does is it allows people to go search for that hashtag. It's like a search term, really, is what it is. And it allows people to go search for the hashtag FarmHer. It allows me to go search that hashtag and see all of the really cool things that people are posting about, the pictures that they're sharing. It's such a cool way to be able to share FarmHer. And I encourage you after this to, if you're on social media, go just search for that hashtag and just look at some of the pictures that people post. It's absolutely awesome. The hashtag has gotten far bigger than what FarmHer is, which has been a pretty cool thing. So in FarmHer Life, that was when we started in our newsletter earlier this year. So if you have a picture from your farm and you want to share it, use the hashtag FarmHer Life, and we pick out one to share every month in our in our newsletter. So how many of you blog? Okay. I have a blog, but I can't even tell you the last time that I blogged. But one thing, you know, it's a good way to start putting yourself out there. And one really cool thing about, I'll talk about this a little bit more later. We launched an online community. So it's a social network for women in agriculture through our website, farmher.com, earlier this fall. And my goal is to help, you're connecting at places like this, and my goal is to help you go away from places like this and to keep that connection and that discussion going. And it's free to join, and when you join, every member gets a blog. So if you've been thinking about like just dipping your toe in the water but you're not sure how to do it, this is a really good way to do it. And the top blog posts on here, even if you have your own blog already, if you share them through here, the top ones go through to the FarmHer homepage, which gets thousands and thousands of hits every day. So definitely something to think about. So this is where you can find more FarmHer on social media at FarmHer1, using the hashtag FarmHer or our website. That's the front page of our website, and that is Lois showing Gracie the picture of her in Oprah magazine, which I borrowed from her Facebook page. So at this point, people usually go, well, this is great. So what is this? Like, what do you do? You just take pictures, and what do you do with those? So my goal is to get those pictures out in front of as many people as possible. So you, as women in agriculture, look at what you do with importance and pride, because that's super important, not only for you, but it's super important for the next generation. But also so people outside of agriculture realize that women do play a really active and important role in agriculture. So we have a display. If you stop by my booth, you'll see some of those pictures. Those have been all over the place. We have a documentary coming out on Iowa Public Television this spring that features 7 different women from Iowa and around the country. And try to get to as many events and conferences as we can. And then we just completed our first conference for young women in agriculture. We had 250 attendees at a conference at the FFA Enrichment Center. And it was fun, it was informational, I think it was inspirational. Our goal was to connect these young women with each other and with women who are successful in production or professional ag roles. And we're already planning our next one in Iowa, and we're gonna do 3 more around the US next year. So it's focused on ages 16 to 23, which I think is a super important age to reach out and say, hey, what do you wanna do in agriculture? And let us help you kind of make some of those connections that'll help you get there to do that. This is just a picture of the display. It was on display at USDA in Washington, D.C. for National Ag Day last year, which was pretty cool. And we were at FFA convention, and that is one of the videographer from Iowa Public Television who has been working on the documentary. So I mentioned before, you can join the online community for free. I'd welcome you all to go check it out. I actually do a terrible job of emailing you and staying in contact, so you won't get lots of emails from me. The other thing you can do if you just want to stay up to date about FarmHer is join our mailing list, which is a monthly newsletter that we send out with information and inspiration and usually plenty of pictures as well. So this last video isn't going to play because the internet didn't work, but I actually shared it last week. If you go to our FarmHer page, you can look at it. It's on YouTube because I realized that I actually have enough pictures. I have way more than enough pictures now to be able to put together our own version of that really popular commercial, but just featuring some of the women that I've met along the way. So is there any questions about pictures, about FarmHer, about anything? Someone, oh yeah, great.
One of the things I've been struggling with pictures is a good photo editing for my computer, because we have tons of pictures that we take at shows and around the farm, and some that need touch-ups, and I'm like, I have no idea where to go look.
Yeah, there's if you do a Google search for photo editing software, there's a number of free ones. I use Photoshop, which is what I learned in college, and is not like the most user-friendly. I wouldn't say you want to jump right in and start using that, but I would just do a quick Google search, and I'm trying to think of some of the. Does anybody else have any ideas for good photo editors that they use? Yeah? PicMonkey.com. There you go, PicMonkey. That's one I kept thinking of SurveyMonkey, but I knew that wasn't it. PicMonkey.com. It's like a free version of Photoshop, basically, right? Yep. Yeah. So check that one out and see if that helps. But
what about apps for myself?
Apps from my cell phone. I have one called PhotoGrid. I use Instagram a lot with the filters in Instagram. Just the photo editor that comes with the iPhone is what I use mostly. Katie's got something to say, I think.
I love Snapseed.
What is it?
Snapseed.
Love it.
Okay. There you go. I might have to go download that.
And I use PicMonkey too.
Yeah. Yeah. PhotoGrid, I think, is a really cool one. You can put together little videos, real quick little videos. It takes like a minute, to do these little clips of still pictures too. Any other questions? Yeah.
So when you're in the barn, lighting up low, and you have to have your eyes open, how do you get your photos not to come out grainy?
I don't. They are grainy. With the camera, the better camera you have, the less grain. We've had this discussion before. Her question, for any of you who didn't hear it, was how do you get your pictures to not come out grainy? Because when you have to increase that ISO, which used to be film speed, say you normally shoot at like a 400 and you have to go up to like 1,000. What happens is your pictures, they still come out, but they've got this it's like grain throughout them. And I don't. I just have to accept the fact that some of my pictures are grainy, and that is real life, and they're still shown in their natural light, so I stick with it. Nobody's going to pay me a bajillion dollars to sell it as a stock photo, but I still like what it shows, So yeah, it's just a balance. I try to spend as little time as possible in a barn with no light. I like to have as much, use the most light that you can in any situation. The more light, the better. Well, except for in the middle of the day in Oklahoma when it's blazing hot. Any more questions? Okay, the one other thing I want to say then is that we do sell merchandise. That's kind of the third arm of FarmHer that makes it go. And so we've got a whole bunch of that over there. We're going to be there through the reception tonight. And come look at the pictures that are up. They're all pictures of women with cattle, and most of them are from here in Iowa. So, or come say hi at least. Lexi and I'll be there. No other questions? Okay, thank you.